Hi everybody. So if you didn't know me or you don't know what exactly we're doing, you jumped in from Twitter or something. This is like my sort of prototypical, proto experimental YouTube channel where I'm kind of just talking to my friends that are doing cool stuff, um, and that's about it. If you don't know me, I my name's Jared. I'm a writer. I did Dryfoot for Mad Cave Studios. And I've tweeted a bunch about giving Mexican swords, which is I think what I'm probably better known for now. So first up, I have Frankee White, and I'm going to bring him on right now. Hey, Frankee. So Frankee, you're a writer, right?
What was that?
You're a writer.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm a writer. I can't draw. I tried to draw these mechs earlier today. That's not as good as it gets.
Yeah. So I actually met you when you were doing 20 Fists.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 Fists is one of my favorite comics I've read this year. 20 Fists is super good. It's and you're getting that colored right now?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and that's by Gab Contreras is coloring that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's the first person I reached out to, and she said yes. So it was getting the one you wanted, which was nice.
Yeah. So kind of give me, before we get into Starless Daydream, can you kind of give me a rundown of, we were talking about this before we went live, but just kind of a rundown of your experience with Kickstarter and 20 Fists and how you kind of got to where you were launching something like this, which is a charity book.
Yes. So I've used Kickstarter. This is my fifth project on Kickstarter. One was for a children's book that I wrote with my friends that doesn't really get publicized with my comic stuff. Then I did 3 Kickstarters for 20 Fists. The first one failed miserably. The second one was for the first issue, and we hit our goal, but it was very low. And then the third one, which was to basically give everybody everything, was successful, and it actually did pretty decently. So I was like, you know what, this is working pretty well. Let's keep going this route, which leads me to Project Starless Daydream, which is happening now. And that one is sort of like a mad fever dream I had where I was like, I want to tell a mech story. I also want to work with a ton of people, and making comics is a slow going process. So if you lock in with one artist for a book or something, you're with them for a while. Whereas I was like, I want to work with this person. I want to work with this person. So I got them all in for 1 to 2 pages each, basically, to tell this finale to a mech story for an anime that never existed.
I like that you described it as a fever dream. You just had this big fever dream, and you were like, yeah, I'm just gonna do that.
That's really what it was. I originally had it as a 2-page short story, which is the short that opens the zine now. And we were working on it, and I was like, something about this character is really sitting well with me. I bet it could be more. And then suddenly, before I realized it, I had messaged a fuck ton. Oh, wait, can I swear?
Yeah, go for it.
A fuck ton of artists. And I was like, well, it's too late now. You've already started. Now you got to ride this out and see what happens.
So I know you, it's got 30 creators attached.
Mm-hmm.
Is it you? And I saw Danny Lore on there. Are they writing or are they editing?
They're editing. So this is the first time on a project that wasn't for a publisher. So 20 Fists, I didn't have an editor. I was that was my baby. Don't touch it. No one tell me what to do with it, sort of situation. And for this one, I was because I'm I guess the best word is curating all these pieces, picking the artist that I think will go well with certain pages and everything like that. I was I want to have someone check me on the story that I'm telling and make sure that is cohesive and makes sense, and sensitivity reading and stuff like that. So
right.
Danny's done an amazing job editing. I hope to work with them for future projects too.
Right. I was I saw Danny and I was man, are they contributing a script? But they're also such a good editor that sometimes I forget they do that.
I'm the only writer except for Gary Maloney is doing a little journal entry page for it.
Okay.
Really only because he messaged me. He's like, hey, I know you got artists. Do you need a writer? I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Otherwise, I was going to just write everything. But he asked, so I was like, okay, that'll be fun. And his page is really good too.
So it's got with all these artists, are they each doing like one page of a longer story, or is it a little bit more sporadic?
So it's one narrative across 50, I think it's right now it's 51 pages. And each artist, I would say, essentially has like a scene. So they're either
Mm-hmm.
doing a pinup, a double page spread, sequential pages. But if they're doing sequential pages, it's like encapsulated. So like you could read their one page or their 2 pages, and it's like that's that moment for that artist, basically. There's no like in the middle of a sequence, basically you change artists.
Right.
Uh,
Okay. Well, that's cool. Um, and then so like you only have, so it is a charity book, right? It's all going.
yeah, net proceeds, yeah, are going to the Trevor Project.
Okay. And where did that sort of an idea come from? Was that just you being a nice person, or was there more of a root to that?
Well, so part of it was because this whole project is kind of like crazy. And it's like I said, I said it before we got on, but that this project really is for me more than anything. Like, I'm like, this is one of those situations where it's going to sound fake, but I'm just happy that I'm making the book and then I'll be able to have this. Like, it's mine basically. So when we were making it, I was like, this is so weird. This is such a random project. I don't even know if people are going to like it. Let's just give like the proceeds to someone like to like an organization that can actually do good with it, because like basically on all my previous books I haven't made my money back anyways. So like still working on that for other books, so like let's do something good with it, because it's such a strange idea.
Right. And so, like, I know, kind of give me an idea of where the mech thing came from, because I've seen you like talk off and on about, Gundam and building Gundams and stuff like that. But like, well, what's the more of a root cause from that?
That's basically it. I grew up a big Gundam fan since I was probably like 9 or 10, whenever it started playing on Toonami. Um, so I have been a mech fan forever, and it's been one of those. It was one of those situations where it was like I wanted to put my stamp on that genre. So I kind of have done that so far with my first 3 works. Broken Bear is like a dark horror fantasy, which is a genre I really appreciate. 20 Fists is basically my wanting to do the Warriors. That's one of my favorite movies ever. So I wanted to do like a street fight, gang movie, but as a comic. And then this is Max, which is like my other love. So that's where it was literally just like, I want to do this. I want to have something in this world where whether or not it, gets popular or not, I can say I did that. I contributed to that genre, at least a little bit.
Right. And so give us a little bit of an idea of like what the central, I guess, narrative is behind um, Starless Daydream. I'm also super curious about the name. If that's a spoiler, don't give it to me. But I'm really curious.
So I'll do the name first. So for the name, it's basically just a situation where in a lot of anime that I like, they have like just sort of a rant. It's like it's almost sounds like it's nonsensical, like Neon Genesis Evangelion, or Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. Like they're words, and like but they evoke like something in your head even before you process like what the heck they're talking about. And so that's what I wanted to do with this. So I just came up with Starless Daydream, and I was like, that sounds cool. And it sort of means something when I'm like writing the script. I'm like, okay, I can definitely see where you can tie that to it. And then the project part literally was just, it was called Starless Daydream. As we were making it, I kept calling it Project Starless Daydream because it was like a big old project for me. And then at the end of the day, I was like, actually, that sounds even better. So, and then for the story, basically, so it's the finale essentially. So when the reader starts this book, they'll basically be starting if you had like turned on the TV and it was the last episode, or 2-part finale or whatever of a series. So basically the premise is there's a mech pilot for a colony called Saturn Sigma, and Saturn Sigma is at war with Earth, and it's been going on for 10 years, and they're in the dying days of the war. It's like almost over. And this mech pilot, Fuku Basara, they are like the ace pilot for Saturn Sigma, and they basically can just wipe the floor with everybody. But they're like beat. They've been fighting for like 6 years straight, and they have had it. They don't want to take any more orders than anything like that. So they decide that they're going to fight for themselves, and that's the central like thesis of the story, is that they now don't want to fight in a war they don't actually care about. They want to make their own decisions for themselves. The problem with that is that everything they've done throughout the war has a ripple effect. And so just because they have now decided, well, I don't want to do this anymore, it doesn't mean they get to be done with it.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's like, I mean, I get what you're saying. That's super heavy at the same time, right? Like, this character's made choices and now they have to live with it. You know, I think that's super interesting. I'm even more excited about it than I was before. And then you guys got funding in 4 hours. I know we also like it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was crazy.
Yeah. And we were talking about it just before we came on. Like, it was like the summer of Kickstarters. And in spite of all of these Kickstarters, you guys got funding in literally 4 hours. So I think part of it has to, like, you and our mutual friend Fel with Commander Rao, I thought you guys both did this really good marketing thing where everybody knew the projects existed. I had seen you talking about, Project Starless Daydream. I'd seen Fel talking about it. And so when it got announced that you guys were like 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out from Kickstarter, everybody was just hyped. Was that something that you've learned from previous Kickstarters, like going into this one?
Well, so I think if you are making your comics on your own, right, and you're not under a publisher or anything that has any sort of marketing budget, it's in your best interest, something to show that's, that will get people interested. A lot of publishers, they'll have you sign an NDA because it's a secret and they want to have a big announcement. But if you don't have the press behind that or the following or anything like that, there's no point in you doing that. Because, like, I could make a splash announcement, like, right the week before that Starless Daydream comes out, and most people will be like, oh, well, I like mechs, I guess. Like, because they don't know anything about it. Like, I'm not necessarily a big name or anything like that. So it's, it's this, you instead set out this pathway where you have to do a slow rollout and a buildup of it and get people interested and aware that this is a thing that will exist at some point. That's definitely been my approach. That was my approach for 25th too. Like, I also have a problem with oversharing though, where I'm like, as soon as someone sends me a new page, I'm like, can I send, I'm asking myself, can I send it? Like, can I share it with people?
See, that's what I was doing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying I give the whole book away for free, basically.
Yeah. When we were working on Dryfoot, that was exactly what I would. Orlando and Nia would send me stuff in an email, and I'd be like, "Let's just put it out there. Let's just show everyone."
Why would it look so good?
Yeah, it's their fault because they do good work, and now I have to keep this secret.
I can't believe they've done this to me.
So, let's talk about 25th for a second, because I don't feel like I've like really gotten to like pick your brain about 25th. But I've seen the Warriors like once, maybe 10 years ago, and I got the vibe of the Warriors still. But was the romance? I can't remember for the life of me if there was like a romance arc in 25th or in the Warriors.
In the Warriors, I wouldn't call it a romance. There is something there that you could say is somewhat romantic, I guess, for the Warriors and the place that they're in, but it's not really romance. My original email to Kat for 25th, when I had originally thought of the idea and wrote the first like 20 pages of it, was not even a romance. It was, I wanted to do a street gang Western book. So the whole opening sequence when the gang, the big jackets come to the bar, it's like a saloon Western, sort of setup. So that was my intention. And then once I wrote that opening sequence and gave it to Kat, and she came up with the characters based on my descriptions in the book. So basically I didn't have any sort of physical descriptors. I just wrote like Big Jacket 1 or No Name 1, and then what they were saying and what they were doing. And I said, draw like who you think these people are, basically based on this, and then that's what we'll go with, and then I'll build that into the script like for further part of the story. So when I had written that scene of like Billy and Shell outside smoking, in my head it was like two opposable dummies or whatever, and I wanted to have like this kind of just intensity. And so when she drew Shell and Billy, I was like, oh shit, like this is like pretty sexy stuff I got right here. I'm gonna go with this and make this a romance now, instead of just having it be like a Western, where there's no romance or anything like involved with it mostly. But yeah, it was definitely not my intention at first.
So did Kat come up with the hat that everyone's always shitting on? I can't
Oh
remember.
no, so she drew the hat, but I think there's a scene early on where they say like called Wayne Desperado and stuff like that. But yeah, she's the genius behind all those designs, like the Ferris Wheeler design and everything like that. I had a descriptor by that point for Ferris Wheeler, and my design, if you drew it, would probably be just stupid looking compared to what she but
So, did you like was making it black and white? Which I really like black and white comics when they're done well, and I really liked that 25th was black and white. But I also really like Gab Contreras. So when I found out she was coloring it, I was like, "Yep, sold." But was the plan to always get it colored, or was that sort of like on the back burner and it's, hey, we can do this?
So when we started it, I originally wanted to get it colored right away, and we did have a colorist originally. So like we have like the first 16 or something pages colored by a different colorist, but then just the process for it was so long, and because I was bouncing it between Broken Bear and 25th at the same time, it was just like too hard to keep a schedule going for the colorist too. So we just had to like part ways. So the idea at first was to do color, and we got like 16 pages in. The process was going really slow, but I'm seeing Kat's art and I'm going like, this is so good that like we don't even need a colorist, at least to do like this first initial one. We can do something that's kind of cool in this black and white street fight book. So it didn't intentionally end up like that.
Well, I think it works really well. I actually think that it gives it sort of like a mood, a certain kind of mood for it. That feels like a little bit heavy, but I love Gab's work. I think Gab is like phenomenal. So I'm super excited to still see it in color.
Yeah, she sent me 5 pages already, and I shared one of them on Twitter. But she sent me like the first page, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be so freaking good!" Like I can't whole thing color. This is gonna be the true test for me to not share anymore. I said I'm doing 1 page. Everyone knows the book exists already, and they know it's getting colored. I don't need to say anything about it anymore. But man, it's gonna be hard not to share more pages.
So, as someone you said you've launched. And you've done 5 Kickstarters, 4 of them were successful?
Yes.
So as somebody who's done that, like who's both failed and succeeded, and maybe more on one side than the other, what do you think is the best lesson like you could give someone who's fixing to start one?
So I would say one is obviously be your biggest cheerleader, right? Like whatever you're going to kickstart, you have to be so overwhelmingly confident in it, basically, that you think it's worth people paying for without knowing what it is, basically, So you have to be your biggest cheerleader, and you have to be ready to do that. You have to be ready to constantly talk about your work, especially if you don't have like any kind of marketing budget or anything like that. And you'll feel dumb and you'll feel like you're being the most annoying person on Twitter, but you have to do it. Like you have to do that. Another thing is obviously spend the time in advance getting it set up. If you have your pitch ready, but you haven't actually set the Kickstarter up, don't kind of just slapdash it together and go like, all right, let's do this. Make sure you have everything set up in advance. Make sure that your Kickstarter page is like really tight and good descriptions while also showing what's in your book. And the most important thing, honestly, after all of these Kickstarters is support other people's Kickstarters. Like the comics community is not very big. So the more you help other people will notice that and then in turn want to help you and see you succeed as well. So when you're seeing all these great Kickstarters, if it's a Kickstarter by someone you never heard of, if it's your good buddy releasing a book, like back it, and if you can't back it, at least share it. And then because that's how you get to know people. I've met a bunch of people now because I was like, oh, your Kickstarter's sweet, and then I add them on Twitter, and then you become friends.
And then one of the things with Starless Daydream that I also was super into is that you have like 2 stretch goals for it, and it's one of them is to make it a hardcover, right?
Yeah, that's the first.
Yeah, and then 10,000. It's 5,000 is the hardcover, 10,000 is the colors.
Yeah.
And that's just because you were like, it's a charity book. I don't need to do a bunch of like fancy schmancy pins and stuff.
Goal, right. Yeah. The goal, right, is to have more donations, or I guess I'll call them more money in, right, than spending. And if I keep adding stretch goals, then I'm going to spend more money that can be donated. So the goal is one stretch goal that's for the book to make it hardcover. I think it'll look really nice in a hardcover format. It'll be like about like manga size for a book. And then obviously the coloring, we set that one further back because we wanted to make sure that, if we hit 10K, we'll definitely have like a sizable chunk of money at that point then to donate before we can even consider getting the book colored. There is some colors in it already. So it's going to be mostly black and white, but like Liana Congas did a double page spread, and hers is in full color, and that's like smack dab in the middle of the book. So you'll get like face with it as you're reading it.
Yeah, that's cool though. I think that adds like an extra layer to it as well. Is that like you're opening up this black and white book to a huge double page spread that's in full color. I want to be smacked in the face by it.
Yeah, and that was the point. I wanted that right when I asked her if she would draw it. That was like the intention from the start. It's like, it's all black and white. I want your page to be like neon Technicolor. Like, let's go. Like, make it as wild looking as possible.
Yeah, and Liana's got some amazing color work too. Like that Spider-Man page she posted like 5 days ago.
Yeah, she's crazy good at coloring.
Yeah.
Page turned out like amazing. Super good.
So, we know I presume there's a 25th Kickstarter coming down the pipe for colors, or are you going to print that, or is that just digital release?
No, I definitely want to get that printed because it'll be the trade edition, right?
Oh, okay.
That's how I've always wanted 25th to be read. It's supposed to be like one sit down, 86-page read. You can read it in like, an hour max sort of situation. We did the single issues as sort of a fun way to do it in black and white and everything in advance to make it a little different. So I'm very excited to do it, the full paperback copy of it. But I don't know. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do a Kickstarter for it or if I'm just going to release it and do like a very limited print run and see what the demand is like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like running 4 Kickstarters for one book starts to tread over like an area of like beating a dead horse. So we'll see. Maybe I'll like poll Twitter and see what they say. Is it too many? Is 4 too many for one book?
No, that it's not. So is there anything else that you're planning on doing like down the line that you're working on right now?
The only thing that I'm working on right now is Broken Bear Volume 2. Well, so we did a short that'll be coming out in Gravely Unusual magazine, which is a horror, independent horror mag. They're really, really cool. So we did a 6-page short for that. And it's like a black and white short, very cool, very moody. It's set 10 years in the future after the first Broken Bear. But the next thing I'm writing is Broken Bear Volume 2, which takes place like immediately after the first volume. And that's just sort of, we're working on it as we go. We're not really in a rush because whatever we do with that, we want to make sure it's the best possible thing.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if you already mentioned this and I missed it. Is Caliber putting that out too?
TBD at this point. Right.
Okay.
Still focused on making sure that book 1 sells a bunch, right? Like that's
right.
And then we'll see. Like if we get good sales continuously with them, then maybe we can come back for the second volume.
Right on. So I'm gonna try and get the cover up for Starless Daydream. We talked about this. I don't know if I can. I'm not smart enough. It's entirely possible. Okay. Boom.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. And that was Saatchi, right?
Yeah. Saatchi did the line work, and then AHG,
yeah,
going to do the colors inside if we had that stretch goal, did the cover. And it looks so freaking good.
Yeah, that's unfair almost. Saatchi shouldn't be allowed to do stuff like this.
Where he's like, I'll just draw you a cover like for free, and he did that, and I was like, let me pay you, please. You can't like gift that to me.
So, yeah. Oh, I forgot. I have a panel too, and the panel's super dope. What's wrong with me? Okay, so let's get the panel in here. First show, right?
Oh yeah.
So
So
that's gorgeous.
that's Simone Ragazzoni, who's an Italian artist. They do. They have a new book out now. They're working on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, one of the spinoffs for Boom. They have 2 pages. I put them both in the Kickstarter because I was like, these are amazing. Like these are ones I want to show off that don't spoil anything. Like
Right.
incredible.
Yeah. I can't even believe how good that is. Yeah, and see everybody else agrees. Daniel said, yeah, Daniel really liked both things. Okay. So um yeah, so and then by like I didn't use the fancy banner I made, but Starless Daydream is already on Kickstarter. You guys are already funded, so you're definitely going to get the book.
Just need
But
you get it hardcover. Come on, guys, let's do it.
yeah. Oh, I'm super into a hardcover idea. I'm like, that would look so good. Is that whole book in a hardcover? And then I have your Twitter in the description for the thing. Is there anything else you think people should know about you or your work?
Most of my work is fairly sad, so don't think you're gonna get like when I was explaining the storyline, you're like, oh wow, that's heavy. I'm like, yeah, that's basically Broken Bear's heavy. 20 Fists isn't necessarily a happy book by any means.
Yeah,
And
I was about.
Daydream continues that trend, but with a little bit of a hope for tomorrow.
I was about to say that like what I forgot to mention this. We were talking about 20 Fists. 20 Fists' third issue really caught me. Like it really, I think you laid this groundwork really well for the sort of twist where she's not as great as she seems, and there's a reason that there's like that division and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you laid it out really well, and then that twist still like I can't remember the term. I think it's like hiding the lead or something like that, burying the lead.
Yeah, burying the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought you did that super well. Like I thought that was like a perfect execution of it because it's all the groundwork's there and then it's exposed and you're still surprised, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That was one I was really worried about that because the third act, whatever you want to call it, gets like really heavy. Like for a fight comic, right? Like you're expecting a certain level of violence, but when it gets to the one-on-one portion of the book, it gets really heavy. And I was a little worried about that. Just how people would react. Would they think it's too heavy? And I had shared it with Kira Akamoto, who did the variant cover for it. And they read it and they were like, oh, like this is so good. Like, and then they were like, and I went back and reread it. And now I see all the little things that you laid there. I'm like, oh, like that was the first person that basically read the comic in full, like from beginning to end, besides like me or Kat or DC. And I was like, thankfully, like first person to read it was like, I get it. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good. Like as long as one person gets it.
Yeah, and Kira's cover was amazing.
So good, so freaking good. I am consistently trying now to get them to work with me. Like what would you do a cover for this one?
Well, Frankee, thank you for coming on. And like I said, Starless Daydream, Project Starless Daydream is on Kickstarter. It's already funded. You get the book. So, and it's like you were talking about, it's like 80% done. So, unless Frankee is a really good thief, you're going to get it. And to be fair, I did get 20 Fists. I got all my 20 Fists. So you're not that great of a thief, you know?
Would feel really bad. I was raised Catholic. Guilt is driven into my body. So like, I couldn't even do that.
You know, is that why all your stuff's sad?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably a deep-rooted issue that I'm working out in my comic, basically.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, Frankee. Thank you for coming on. You're the first person on this very experimental YouTube show that I'm probably not investing a bunch of money into, but it was fun.
No, better this way. This was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, thanks, bud. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
All right. So that was Frankee. I know a secret about Frankee that I'm not putting on his banner, and we talked about that before. And so you're just gonna have to meet Frankee in person, get your book signed from him. But yeah, so that is on thing. I mean, I spent all this time on these banners, so I've got to use them now. So yeah, now that there's another banner. Okay, so next up is Mr. Popular himself, Brian Wickman. Brian, let me see if I can get. Yeah, hey Brian.
Did you catch the tail end of my grimacing at you calling me that?
So Brian, I have a banner for you too. Look, a banner
Woo!
for everybody.
Amazing.
So, Brian, you wrote Grit, which is like flying off the shelves, yeah?
Yeah, which is tight. Issue 1 sold out in about a week. Issue 2, the pre-orders were during the worst of like store shutdowns, so orders weren't great. But I got word yesterday that it looks like we're sold out a week ahead. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
congratulations.
thanks, man. And I literally couldn't have asked for it to go better.
Yeah, for everybody who doesn't know, like I think I read Grit #1 like months ago, and but like Dryfoot and Stargazer, because Brian, Anthony, and I are all part of the triumvirate of COVID delays. Um, all of those books got pushed back like several months, and so Grit selling out, I thought was the dopest thing. And then you guys got a cool variant. You got a cool second printing cover.
Yeah. Mark Laszlo did the second print cover, and I've been like internet pals with Mark for a long time and never properly introduced myself. And I know he and like Vlad are pals and stuff who I've worked with a bunch. So yeah, I shot him a message and was like, "Hey, surprise! I need another cover for this. Is there any chance you'd be willing to do something?" And he was totally on it. He's been following Kevin for a long time and loves Kevin's stuff, so he was happy to help out, which is rad because I love everything Mark does.
Right. And so like for anybody who doesn't know, what can you kind of give us a rundown of what Grit's about?
No. Yeah, Grit is a Southern fried sword and sorcery adventure story. It's a little bit horror. It's a little bit buddy comedy. It's about an old man whose job is hunting monsters. He's very good at it, but when he encounters a job that goes way off the rails, he is faced with a thing he can't just chop up. Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about it. Some of the stuff that it seems like you have like a really intricate, clever thing going for people in issue 2, because I remember you talking about it, how issue 1 was the real violence one, and issue 2 is really where he has to kind of deal with that.
Sorry, Jared, you just super froze. I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So like Grit, you were talking about how the first issue, sort of is like the real action-packed violence one, but the second one is like a bit of a more. He's got to deal with the violence that he's been, living with his whole life.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a bait and switch, and I've been pretty upfront about this in like interviews and stuff, that I think that it is fun to watch an old man cut up goblins. That is undeniable, but like at some point you have to face like, did that work? And did it work for everyone involved? So yeah, issue 2 introduces a character named Ari, who becomes the other like central figure in the book, and she is sort of a good foil for Barrow because she's this really aggressively pacifistic individual where she is so anti-violence that she becomes like heated about it in interesting ways that I won't spoil. But yeah. So it becomes sort of like enjoying and indulging in sword and sorcery while sort of poking fun at like how one-track mind these heroes can be.
Right. So I dig that. So with Grit, how's been production on it? Like how would you describe your process? I know, I don't know how Scout works, so I didn't know how much of a hand they had when you guys were in production for it.
Pretty hands off. I mean, I gave them a pretty detailed outline, like with the pitch. I gave them like all 3 issues planned out all the way through, so they knew everything that was coming and whatnot. And they helped me hammer down on like the format a little bit, because I think we originally had 4 issues and pared it down a little just because we're beefing some stuff up and moving into the trade instead. Sorry, my dog is mad in the background. Yeah, so beyond like some physical production parts of it, I think they also wish there was less ink splatter on the pages, but Kevin and I are indulging in the punk rock vibes of this book. They are messy pages. I have conceded to clean up for the trade, but the floppies are like covered in ink splatter. Yeah, but otherwise they're pretty hands off. I'm totally good like bouncing ideas off of them if I need to hand it to anything, but they're not like heavy handed as far as editorial.
Oh, dope. So when you guys were like kind of working on the book, I mean, how long have you had Grit sort of on the burner?
Since I think it was April 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, so we weren't like consistently working on it. We took some breaks, and there was like a bunch of concept art, and then we didn't do much with it for a little bit, because I wrote the full first issue before we like dug into anything. But yeah, so I like cold emailed Kevin because I was on his Deviant art, and I know. That's how you know it was 2015.
It checks out.
Yeah. So he did this really rad, just like messy ink drawing of a bunch of orcs, and he did some fan art of Fafford and Grey Mouser from the old Fritz Leiber books. I'm like a huge, like I said, I'm a sword and sorcery nerd. So these like 1930s fantasy books are like totally my shit. So he did some fan art of that, and I emailed him, and I had a couple of like really loose ideas, and the one that we ran with was Old Man Monster Hunter, and it turned into what it is now.
So you guys have kind of going back and forth on it. Like how much of it has changed since? Like I'm sure it's gone through like a whole transformation, but like what would you say is it even close to what you had in 2015?
It is much more expansive. It's also a whole lot smarter than what we were originally doing. We had never worked together, and we didn't really know each other. So we were just going to do this one shot for fun. So it was literally just going to be this like bloody mess of a thing with sort of a cryptic, maybe that wasn't a good idea at the end. But then we became like pretty close pals, just like through working on this for a long time. And we pitched it around, and we like came out with a couple of outlines on how to extend it, and we tweaked the ending of issue 1 a little bit so it made more sense. But yeah, I mean, the general idea was there, but like when we went into it, the way in which we addressed the messiness of it all wasn't there. It was way more vague.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I'm glad that the bones of it seem to have survived at least. You fleshed it out more, but I'm glad the structure was there.
Yeah.
So going into issue 2, after obviously how like issue 1's done super well, going into issue 2, like what do you think? How do you think your audience is going to take that? Like, how do you think that I mean, you've been upfront about the bait and switch. I've heard you talk about that. I'm just curious what you think the reaction is going to be.
I hope that people, man, if you could just read 3 issues of an old man killing shit, like good for you, but I couldn't do it. So I think that we sort of throw people into the deep of it and then hope that they're along for the ride as we like dredge them back out of it. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I think that issue 2 is just a better comic overall. Issue 1 is sort of intentionally this ultra violent, storyless mess until the very end, and then there's a reason for that, and we don't really get a chance to get to that reason until the second issue. I don't know. I think it's funnier. I think it's like there's a really sad bit in the middle, and that was a really cool thing. Like anyone who's seen Kevin's style knows how like fluid and sort of the movement really stands out. So like making Kevin do this really sad, weird, kind of trippy scene, I think stretched muscles for both of us, and it turned out really cool. And shout out to Simon Goff for like the dude has like 3 different coloring styles over the course of the issue because of some of the weirdness that goes down. And the whole creative team just did a lot of subtle weird stuff to match the stuff that goes down in issue 2, and I'm super happy with it. Like I think it's the comic that solidifies what Grit is actually about.
Right. Do you think that old lady at Pulp 716 is going to be super psyched?
Dude, I hope so. I have offered to just send them $10 to buy her the rest.
I loved her. I was like, this is the coolest thing of all time.
I will protect Pat until my dying day.
I gotta send some stuff over to Pulp this week, and I'm gonna make sure Pat also gets a copy of Dryfoot. Like I'll include it as her cost. But so when it comes to like what I don't think I've read Big White, but so like, do you think angry puppy?
He's like 12 pounds of absolute terror.
Do you think that like Grit sort of solidifies your writing style? Like what stuff that you normally like to write about outside of sort of Barrow chopping up goblins and feeling sad?
Big White is way more sort of introspective. It's a weird slow burn of a horror story. Like any of the violence in it sort of takes place off panel. It like really shields the reader from what's going on. And I think that Grit is instead like a spiked flail to your face. Like I am handing you everything you need to know to understand Grit all the time. And I think that's fine. I think it's fun. It's the way that this book should be. So I don't know. Like the stuff that I've got in the chamber coming up afterward is also very different. I think I like trying stuff. Even if it doesn't work, that's fine. But like I've got like a weird family drama horror thing cooking, which is so the opposite of this gore-filled fantasy story. So I don't know. I don't think I've landed on my style yet.
So is that another pitch you're working on, or is that something that you've got long-term cooking?
It's a pitch I'm cooking up.
Okay, and like I'm curious how anybody who writes horror, I'm kind of curious how y'all approach it, because I don't think I'll ever write something that's horror. I'm just so out of my realm.
I do a lot of sort of reverse engineering from specific scenes when it comes to horror stuff. And that was the same deal with Big White. I had 2 specific scenes from that comic in mind, and then was like, okay, I need to connect the dots here, and like, how would this character get from point A to point B, and try to work that way. Because like my biggest complaint in horror stuff, what was that Alien movie that came out a few years ago where all the scientists were like sticking their hands in eggs? And I was like, no, you wouldn't do that. So I try to just like think of where things need to go and like let the character get there, and then take out the stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that was Prometheus. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't remember.
It was the one after that. I will defend Prometheus. I love Prometheus.
I have really mixed feelings about Prometheus, but that's like a whole other. We should just do a whole thing about that next time. We'll just watch it and come back with our thoughts.
Welcome to our 10-part podcast where we debate Prometheus.
Where we fight each other until we end it on a violent note,
Yep, that's it.
So let me see if I can bring up your covers, because your covers are super dope as well. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. Yeah, technology's not going to beat me, not today.
Not today.
So this is your second printing cover, right?
Yeah, that's from the second printing. That's the Mark Laszlo cover.
Right on.
Yeah, man, what a good. I'm excited to hold this myself. Like I said, I've been following Mark's stuff for years, so really cool to get him on this.
Yeah, I love that whole the whole energy it captures, and like again, the thing that I've heard you talk about is the hyperviolence in that first issue, and I love this so much because like that speaks hyperviolence,
But then you got the Songbird, so it evens out.
Exactly. And then this is your second issue, first printing, which is apparently already gone, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I don't have the confirmation like from anyone at Diamond, but it looks like the numbers are adding up that way.
Dope.
Which is cool. Yeah, so that's if anybody read the first issue, the shadowy figure in the background is going to be a fun, weird surprise.
I like that. I like I don't know. I just think Grit's so smart, like the way that you've approached it, and I'm super excited about it. Like the way that you sort of see the way that you've built up issue 2. I'm really excited to kind of like dive into it.
I'll just send it to you. I think I may have. I don't know. I've moved around stuff in my Dropbox so many times in the last month. Yeah, yeah. I'm thanks, man. Sometimes it feels stupid and sometimes it feels smart, and I just hope we pulled it off. People seem to have enjoyed it so far. So
yeah, I mean,
good.
if you're getting rid of it, if you're going to a second printing potentially on your first 2 issues, that would tell me that you're pulling it off. So what's next? I know you said you had your family horror. Do you have anything like that you can share that you like want to come out with and talk about, or?
Sure. So actually today on Multiversity, we put up a 4-page short set in a world of grit. It introduces a character that I might be doing some more stuff with, which would be dope. I'm working on getting like volume 2 of Grit sort of organized, but it will look vastly different than what volume 1. We're trying some weird approaches to telling some different stories that feel very different. But yeah. This is one of those like these 4 pages are such a hard pivot from the main story because it's this sort of kind-hearted, tender little tale about Barrow making friends with this drunk zombie, basically. So they're like swapping war stories in the wine cellar of a tavern. And it's just so radically different in tone from the book itself. And I think we're going to try to push into like weird other directions with it like that.
Well, that's cool. I mean, like I said, I think like my approach about this, or what I like about your approach has been how experimental you're willing to be with what you're doing with it, you know? And I feel like you've touched on that quite a bit. I'm super excited for it.
It seems like a dumb move because it's my first series, but
it's not. That's what makes it cool.
Yeah. We're having fun with it. I needed an excuse to get. I love fantasy stuff, and now I have a world I can come back to and explore different corners of and tell different kinds of stories, which is really cool. Like even within the scope of Volume 1, like I said, number 1's an action movie. Number 2 gets sad and weird, and number 3 verges on like a kind of all over the place. I haven't talked too much about that yet, but let's let folks get through issue 2, I guess. But it ends in a very different place than it begins. And it'll be really cool to sort of push other characters and do weird stuff. Yeah,
and so whenever you're working on something like Grit, like the thing that it kind of encapsulates all these different elements of fantasy, but really kind of injects that action level thing and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious because you mentioned earlier that you have like you sort of have these scenes that you kind of explore. What was like the sort of the inspiring ground for Grit?
So initially, it was we really liked the idea of so the thing that Barrow fights towards the end of issue 1, it goes really well and then it doesn't, and the way in which it doesn't was the way that I wanted to end the one shot, because I really like these sort of Twilight Zone-esque endings where it's like, oh, it's solved, but it's still bad. So that was the initial thing. The new scene that I've built it around is a thing that happens around the middle-ish end of issue 3. And it brings that whole question of when is violence the right tool to a head in sort of a catastrophic way. And it's a lot of fun and I think surprising. And I think it's some of my favorite pages in the book are this sort of weird conflict that, is a little surprising. Right. So yeah. I can't say what the scene is yet because it's major spoilers. But yeah, a thing in issue 3 that happens is sort of the culminating moment.
Okay. And did you have like anything inspired like where you went with Grit? Was there something that like you really started thinking about, I guess the consequences of violence and things like that?
So I think and this is the same deal with Big White. If you read that, like I said, I love these Twilight Zone endings, but they're also a very easy way out. Because it's like cliffhangers are easy to write. It's easy to be like, oh, but what happened? So yeah, it's like I don't have to write it. You write it in your brain. So I think the inspiration came from seeing, okay, well now I have to write what happens afterward. And again, just I didn't go into it with too many plot points because I hadn't planned on extending it initially. So it was just sort of that, well, logically, what will happen next? Like issue 2 starts with Barrow on a completely different job. Like he's done with the events of issue 1 as far as he's concerned, because that's what he would do is he would keep taking work. Like nothing has changed for him at the end of the first issue. And then things start to change for him pretty quickly after that. So it was really just sort of following him. And then I had to come up with a character that was sort of like a foil for him. And that's how Ari came together. And then that's when I started to come up with those sort of moments where the two of them butt heads in meaningful ways.
So on that note, I'm coming up with like foils and the way that you're talking about Barrow. Like, where do you? Are you one of these people who does? Well, I have two questions now that I've thought about it. Or I'll ask the first one. Are you one of these people who does like really, or writers who does really in-depth character studies before you even start hashing anything out, or do you kind of try and figure it out along the way?
A little of both. I have my like bullet points that if I am not sure how a character would react, I try to like center myself and come back to like, okay, this is the core of who this person is. And working with Kevin is like having a built-in editor because he's really good at being like, this seems weird. And I'm like, you're right. Thanks, bud. So, and then like, I totally like take his advice. We're very much co-creators in this book. But yeah, I do tend to figure a lot of it out. I'm also like, I think if you look at the book, you would be surprised to know that I don't care that much about world building. Like I find it's a really good way to procrastinate and not get the story out is to be like, well, what's this guy's deal in the background? Panel 3. Like it doesn't matter. And anything meaningful that like fits into the story for a reason. I've got like a little enough backstory that if I need it at some point, I've got it. But like, I don't get into the weeds about like making sure every detail serves this world because that's not the story I'm telling.
Right.
It's pretty condensed. I think I don't know. Issue 1 has 3 speaking characters, and that's it.
Yeah.
Issue 2 is a little more than that. Issue 3 is a different story, but yeah, I mean, I like to keep stuff concise and I like to keep it sort of focused. It's almost like it's a really weird, fantastical slice of life story.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. So like whenever I write, I think like my process of characters is that I start like what is this character like? What's their temperament? And then I do world building from that. Like from that and the general plot that I have. I'm like, well, why does that X or Y thing? So I think I'm like, I feel like you're a hybrid and I'm a little bit like my next question was like how you do plots. Do you because I know people that plot everything out really nice and neat, but I don't do anything. I just write and kind of figure it out on the way.
I do outline like a crazy person before I script. I have like Grit has a little notebook with probably, and again, it's a 3-issue series, probably 20 pages, just numbered 1 to 22, and me like scribbling notes next to them. And those notes never like, Kevin never sees them. Nobody sees these notes because it might just say like bracket on page 15, 16, goblins. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to anyone else, but like I like to figure out how much real estate each scene will take up and be like, okay, is this important enough to the story to take up 4 pages? Probably not. Like, what can I shave off of it? So I do like getting to outlining is quick for me, but that's where I get stuck for a while until I like get the pacing the way that I want it.
Yeah, I feel like all my notes are like way more of a crazy person's because like my notes are like I'll write and then I'll have a notepad or I'll open up a different Word doc. And so it'll just be like stuff that I'm leaving a note to remind myself. And then I like go back and like delete stuff altogether and then rewrite pages and stuff. But I think that's interesting. Like I wish I was so organized and had so put together that I had a 20 page note on exactly what I was going to do.
Don't give me that much credit. you haven't seen these notes, Jared.
Well, that's fair. Okay, so Brian, I have your Twitter in the description for the video thing, live thing. Is there anything you want people to know, like where to find you, what you're cooking up, anything like that?
Buy the dang book.
Yeah.
Go support Project Starless Daydream. It's fucking rad. I'm back that day one. There's so many cool Kickstarters right now. Go give everyone your money. Matt Emmons with Dagger. I feel like all of my friends in comics are on that, which is awesome. What a cool book. Yeah, man. So much, just like come through and buy everyone's stuff.
Yeah.
Including Jared's and then Anthony's, because Stargazer's rad too. Mad Cave's doing so much cool stuff.
Stargazer is very rad. But also, since it's selling out, I want to make sure everybody comes prepared.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to fight somebody for Grit.
Yeah, you have to. I sent Cursed Swords to like 6 comic shops, and you have to fight the guy who owns the shop to get the book. It's wild. I can't believe they agreed.
If you didn't add it to your pool, it's a death match. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's serious business.
It's a warning. You know. All right. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on, man. I really do. I really like talking to you about Grit. I really liked Grit. I've been really like talking to you. So I really hope the second sells out. I hope 3 sells out. I hope I get all these covers and I have a good time.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared. This is fun.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you later. And then there was one. So now that everybody else has gone on to do their fun stuff, I'm going to shamelessly promo my own stuff. Because that's what we're all sort of here for. Dryfoot is available 9/9. I'm super pumped. No one's left yet. You're all still here. You're such nice people. All right. And then Dryfoot number 2 is available for pre-order. It comes out 10/21. Obviously, go back Project Starless Daydream. Go get Grit if you are prepared to fight somebody for it. Which you should always be prepared to fight somebody for a comic. You know, it's just Rona now. If you don't know what the covers look like, there's Dryfoot number 1 and there's Dryfoot number 2. They're both beautiful covers by the amazing Orlando Caicedo and Ornia Sahadewa. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I enjoyed this a lot. Hope everybody learned something and found a book you like.